The alarm bells rang through the Zephyrian transport ship as red lights flashed across every corridor. Captain Veltar pressed his four-fingered hand against the communication panel, his blue skin turning a darker shade with worry. The ship was under attack, and there was nowhere to run. "Captain, 3 pirate vessels are closing in fast," reported his navigation officer, her voice shaking. "They're demanding we surrender our cargo." Veltar looked at the cargo manifest on his screen. Medical supplies for the outer colonies, food shipments, and basic materials for building new homes. Nothing valuable enough to die for, but the pirates didn't care about that. They would take everything and probably sell his crew into slavery. The pirate ships were ugly things, built from stolen parts and welded together with no care for design. They moved like predators around the transport, their weapons charging, with bright energy that made the space around them glow red. Veltar had seen ships like these before. The crews were usually desperate criminals who would kill anyone who got in their way. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from an unknown vessel," his communications officer called out. "Put it through," Veltar ordered, hoping it wasn't another pirate ship coming to join the attack. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Veltar had heard before. It was calm and confident, with a strange accent that was hard to place. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Horizon. We received your distress signal. Are you in need of assistance?" Veltar had heard of humans before. They were a new species that had recently made contact with the Galactic Council. Most council members didn't know much about them except that they came from a small planet called Earth and seemed friendly enough. But Veltar had never seen a human ship in action. "Captain Morrison, this is Captain Veltar of the transport vessel Blue Wing. We are under attack by 3 pirate ships. They are demanding we surrender our cargo." There was a pause. Then Morrison's voice came back, still calm, but with something harder underneath. "Copy that, Captain Veltar. We see them on our sensors. Please maintain your current position and keep your shields up. We're coming to help." Veltar felt a small spark of hope, but it was mixed with worry. The New Horizon was just one ship against 3 pirates. The odds were not good, even with help. "Captain," his sensor officer called out, "the human ship is approaching. It's smaller than the pirate vessels, but the energy readings are strange. I've never seen anything like it." Through the view screen, Veltar could see the New Horizon as it moved toward them. It was sleek and clean, with smooth lines that made it look fast and dangerous. The human ship didn't look like it was built from stolen parts like the pirate vessels. Every piece seemed to fit perfectly with every other piece. That's when Veltar noticed something unusual. The human communication channels were completely open, and he could hear everything the crew was saying to each other. It was like listening to a group of friends working together on a project. "Amy, bring us around to attack position 3, Morrison said. "Pete, target their weapon systems first. We want to disable them, not destroy them." "Roger that, Captain," came a female voice. That must have been Amy. Turning to starboard now. "Attack position 3 in 30 seconds. "Got it, boss," said another voice. "Probably Pete. Weapon systems are charged and ready. I can see their weak spots from here." Veltar was amazed. The humans were talking to each other like they were having a casual conversation, not preparing for a fight that could kill them all. There was no fear in their voices, no panic. They sounded almost cheerful. "Lisa, how are our shields holding up?" Morrison asked. "Shields at full power," Captain Lisa responded. "All systems are running smooth as silk." "Good, Danny. I need you to monitor the transport ship. If any of those pirates get too close to our friends, you let me know immediately." "Already on it, Captain. The transport is safe for now." The pirate ships had noticed the New Horizon and were turning to face this new threat. Their weapons were charging, and Veltar could see the energy building up around their gun ports. The pirates were about to open fire. "Here they come," Morrison said, his voice still calm. "Amy, evasive pattern Delta. Pete, fire when ready." The New Horizon moved like a living thing, twisting and turning through space as the pirate ships fired. Their weapons, bright beams of energy, shot past the human ship, missing by inches. But the New Horizon never stopped moving, and it never stopped shooting back. Veltar watched in amazement as the human ship danced between the pirate vessels. its weapons firing with perfect accuracy. One by one, the pirate ships lost their weapons, their engines, their ability to fight, but the humans never aimed for the crew areas. They were trying to capture the pirates, not kill them. Nice shooting, Pete, Morrison said as the last pirate ship stopped moving. Amy, take us alongside the transport. We need to make sure Captain Veltar and his crew are okay. The whole fight had lasted less than 10 minutes, but it felt like hours to Veltar. He had never seen anything like it. The humans had defeated 3 pirate ships without breaking a sweat, and they had done it while talking to each other like they were out for a pleasant afternoon flight. Captain Veltar, this is Morrison. Are you and your crew injured? Do you need medical assistance? Veltar realized he had been holding his breath. He let it out slowly and pressed the communication button. Captain Morrison, we are all fine. No injuries. I have never seen anything like that before. How did you do it? Morrison's laugh came through the speakers, warm and friendly. Just teamwork, Captain. We've been flying together for a while now. We know how each other thinks. A few minutes later, Veltar found himself on the bridge of the New Horizon, meeting the human crew face to face. They were smaller than he had expected, with only 2 arms and 2 legs each. Their skin was a pale pink color, and they had hair growing from the tops of their heads, but their eyes were bright and intelligent, and they smiled easily. Captain Morrison was a tall man with brown hair and green eyes. He moved with the confidence of someone who had been in many fights and won them all. Lieutenant Amy Foster was shorter, with black hair tied back and dark eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Pete Collins was a big man with red hair and a loud laugh. Lisa Chen was quiet and serious, always checking her instruments. Danny Walsh was young and eager, asking questions about everything. We heard your distress call and came as fast as we could, Morrison explained as they sat in the ship's meeting room. We don't like pirates much. They hurt innocent people for money. But you could have been killed, Veltar said. 3 ships against 1. Why did you take such a risk for strangers? Morrison looked at his crew, then back at Veltar, because it was the right thing to do. You needed help, and we were able to give it. That's what neighbors do for each other. Amy nodded. We've been exploring this part of space for a few months now. We've met a lot of different species, and most of them have been friendly. We want to be good neighbors too. Besides, Pete added with a grin, it was fun. We don't get many chances to test our skills against real pirates. Veltar spent the next hour talking with the human crew, learning about their ship and their mission. They were explorers, sent out by their government to meet new species and learn about the galaxy. They carried scientific equipment, medical supplies, and weapons for protection. But mostly, they carried curiosity and friendship. What impressed Veltar most was how they worked together. During the fight, they had talked constantly, sharing information and coordinating their actions. It was like watching a single mind control 5 different bodies. They trusted each other completely, and that trust made them incredibly effective. When it was time to leave, Morrison shook Veltar's hand in a human custom. If you ever need help again, just call. We'll come running. As Veltar watched the New Horizon disappear into the stars, he made a mental note to include every detail of this encounter in his report to the Galactic Council. The humans were definitely interesting, and they would make powerful allies. Their ability to work together and communicate during combat was unlike anything he had ever seen. He had no idea that this same ability would one day terrify the entire galaxy. Dr. Alina Rodriguez was checking the medical supplies in Kepler Station's main hospital when the alarms started ringing. The sound echoed through the metal corridors, making her heart beat faster. She had been working at the mining station for 2 years, and the alarms had never sounded like this before. This wasn't a drill or a minor emergency. This was the real thing. She ran to the nearest communication panel and pressed the emergency button. This is Dr. Rodriguez in Medical Base 7. What's happening? The voice that answered was tight with, Fear, Doctor, this is Station Control. We have multiple enemy ships approaching. The hegemony is attacking us. All medical staff report to emergency stations immediately. Alina felt cold fear wash over her. The hegemony was the enemy that every council member feared. They were ruthless and cruel, taking slaves and destroying anything they couldn't use. Kepler Station had over 10,000 people living and working. There are families with children, elderly people, workers from dozens of different species. They were all in terrible danger. She grabbed her medical kit and ran toward the main command center. The corridors were filled with people moving quickly, but not panicking. The station's security teams were setting up defensive positions while civilians headed toward the emergency shelters. Everyone knew what to do because they had practiced for this day, hoping it would never come. When Alina reached the command center, she could see the enemy ships on the big screen. There were dozens of them, dark and ugly vessels that looked like they were built for destruction. They were moving toward the station in a formation that looked like a closing fist. "How long until they reach us?" asked Commander Stevens, the station's security chief. 20 minutes, maybe less," replied the sensor operator. "They're moving fast." Commander Stevens pressed a button on his control panel. "This is Kepler Station calling all Council forces in the area. We are under attack by hegemony forces. We need immediate assistance." The reply came quickly, and Alina felt a surge of hope when she heard the familiar accent. "Kepler Station, this is Commander Ryan Brooks of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your call and we're on our way. Hold on tight. Help is coming." Alina remembered the stories about humans and their amazing teamwork during fights. Captain Velta-S report had been shared throughout the council, and many people were curious about these new allies who talked so much during combat. She hoped the stories were true because they were going to need all the help they could get. "Commander Brooks, this is Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Chief Medical Officer," she said into the communication system. "We have 10,000 civilians on this station, including many children and elderly people. Please hurry." "We understand," Dr. Brooks replied, his voice calm and confident. "We have 3 destroyers and 1 cruiser. We'll do everything we can to protect those people." Through the view screen, Alina could see the human ships approaching. They were sleek and fast, moving in a tight formation that looked almost like they were dancing together. Even from this distance, she could see the weapons charging and the shields glowing around each ship. The communication channels filled with human voices as the fleet prepared for battle. Alina listened in amazement as the humans coordinated their attack. It was just like the stories said. They talked constantly, sharing information and working together like parts of the same machine. "Sarah, take your wing to the left flank," Brooks commanded. "We need to draw some of their fire away from the station." "Copy that, Commander," came a female voice. "Lieutenant Kim here, taking destroyers 2 and 3 to port side. We'll give them something to think about." "Danny, you're with me on the right," Brooks continued. "Let's see if we can punch through their forward line." "Roger, Commander Walsh here, right behind you all the way." The human ships split up and began their attack. Alina watched as they moved like a pack of hunting animals, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. The enemy ships were larger and more heavily armed, but the humans were faster and smarter. The battle was fierce from the very beginning. Bright beams of energy lit up the space around the station as both sides fired their weapons. The human ships twisted and turned through the enemy formation, their guns blazing. The communication channels buzzed with constant updates and coordination. Taking fire from the big one on the right, Sarah called out, "Shields holding at 60%. "I see him," Brooks replied. "Danny, can you get a shot at his engine pods?" "Already on it, boss." "Firing now." The enemy ship shuddered as Danny's weapons hit their target. One of its engines exploded in a burst of flame and debris. But there were so many enemy ships, and more kept coming. Alina realized that the hegemony force was much larger than anyone had expected. The human ships were fighting bravely, but they were outnumbered at least 5 to 1. Some of the enemy vessels were moving past the battle to attack the station directly. "Commander Brooks," she called over the communication system, "some of their ships are getting through. They're heading straight for us." "We see them," Dr. Brooks replied. His voice was still calm, but Alina could hear the strain underneath. "We're doing our best to stop them." That's when Alina noticed something that made her blood run cold. Several of the enemy ships had turned their weapons toward the civilian shelters, The hegemony wasn't just trying to capture the station. They were planning to kill everyone on it, including the children. Brooks, they're targeting the civilian areas, Commander Stevens shouted into his microphone. The shelters are taking direct fire. Alina watched in horror as bright energy beams struck the outer sections of the station where the families were hiding. The metal walls glowed red hot from the impacts. Emergency lights flashed as life support systems strained to keep working. She could hear screaming over the internal communication system as people realized what was happening. The enemy flagship, a massive black vessel covered in weapons, moved closer to the station. Its main guns were charging, building up enough energy to crack the station's core structure. Alina realized that they were all about to die. Then something strange happened. The human voices on the communication channels suddenly stopped. Alina had grown used to the constant chatter from the human fleet. For the past hour, their voices had filled the airwaves with updates, orders, and coordination. Brooks giving commands, Sarah reporting her status, Danny making jokes to keep morale up. The sound of humans talking had become like background music. To the battle now, there was only silence. The sudden quiet was so complete that Alina thought the communication system had broken. She checked her equipment, but everything was working perfectly. The human ships were still there, still fighting, but no voices came from them. No orders, no updates, no conversation at all. Commander Brooks, she called. Can you hear me? There was no answer. Alina looked at the main screen and felt her heart stop. The human ships were moving, but not like before. They weren't dancing or flowing like water anymore. Now they moved like hunting predators that had found their prey. Their formation tightened, and they began attacking with a precision and fury that she had never seen before. The enemy ships that had been targeting the civilian shelters were the first to die. The human destroyers hit them with concentrated fire that cut through their shields like they were made of paper. The ships exploded one after another, their debris spinning away into the darkness of space. Alina watched in stunned silence as the human fleet systematically destroyed every enemy vessel that had threatened the station. They moved without speaking, but somehow they coordinated perfectly. It was like watching a pack of wolves hunt together, each one knowing exactly what the others would do. The enemy flagship tried to run when it realized what was happening. The massive black ship turned away from the station and fired its engines at full power. But the human cruiser was faster. It caught up to the flagship and attacked with a violence that shocked Alina to her core. The cruiser didn't just disable the enemy ship, it tore it apart piece by piece, systematically destroying every weapon, every engine, every system that could pose a threat. The flagship's hull cracked and split open, spilling atmosphere and debris into space. In less than 5 minutes, the mighty warship was nothing but floating scrap metal. The other enemy ships saw what happened to their flagship and tried to surrender. They powered down their weapons and broadcast surrender signals on all frequencies. But the human ships didn't stop attacking. They continued their systematic destruction until every single enemy vessel was either destroyed or completely disabled. The silence from the human fleet lasted exactly 18 minutes. Alina timed it on her medical chronometer, unable to look away from the screen as the humans eliminated every trace of the enemy force with cold, mechanical efficiency. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the silence ended. Kepler Station, this is Commander Brooks, came the familiar voice over the communication system. His tone was calm and professional, just like it had been at the beginning of the battle. All enemy vessels have been neutralized. Beginning rescue. Operations for survivors. Alina stared at the communication panel, hardly believing what she had just witnessed. The space around the station was filled with debris from the destroyed enemy ships. Not one hegemony vessel remained intact. The human fleet had eliminated them completely. Captain Lisa Jong stood on the bridge of her ship, the Freedom's Call, looking at the holographic display that showed Titan 7 below them. The mining colony had been quiet for 3 weeks now, ever since hegemony forces had overrun the planet and captured everyone living there. Intelligence reports suggested that hundreds of human colonists were being held prisoner, along with civilians from other council species. Captain, we're receiving final confirmation from command, reported Lieutenant Julie Adams from the communications station. Operation Shepherd is approved. We're cleared to begin the rescue mission. Lisa nodded grimly. Titan 7 had been a peaceful mining colony, home to families who had come to the Outer Rim to build new lives. The colony had good schools, parks where children could play, and a community center where people gathered for celebrations. Now it was a prison controlled by the enemy. Major Kevin Park, are your ground teams ready? Lisa asked into her headset. Reply came immediately. Ready as we'll ever be. Captain, we've got 40 Marines in full combat gear, plus medical teams standing by. The boys are eager to get our people back. Lisa looked at the tactical display. The mission was complex but straightforward. Major Park would lead ground teams to secure the colony's main buildings, while Commander Alex Turner provided air support from his fighter squadron. Lisa would coordinate from orbit, making sure no enemy reinforcements could reach the planet. Alex, how are your birds looking? She asked. All systems green, Captain, came Turner's voice. 8 fighters ready for launch. We can provide close air support wherever Kevin needs it. The plan was solid. Intelligence had identified the main prison facility, the enemy command center, and the defensive positions around the colony. It would be dangerous, but they had faced worse odds before. The key was teamwork and communication, the same qualities that had made humans successful in every battle since joining the Council. All units, this is John. Operation Shepherd is now active. Kevin, you're clear for landing. Lisa watched on her screens as the transport ships descended toward the planet's surface. The communication channels filled with the familiar sound of human coordination, status reports, tactical updates, and the occasional joke to keep spirits up. It was music to her ears. Ground Team Alpha, this is John. You're clear for approach Vector 3, she said as the first transport touched down. Copy that, Captain. Kevin here. We're moving to secure the primary facility, came Major Park's voice. Weather is clear. No immediate hostile contact. Alex, I need eyes on the southern perimeter. Looks like they've got defensive positions we didn't account for, Lisa added. Roger that, Captain. Taking my flight south now. I can see some movement down there, but nothing we can't handle. The operation was going exactly as planned. The ground teams moved through the colony with practiced efficiency, clearing buildings and securing landing zones. The enemy resistance was lighter than expected, which was good news for the rescue teams. Lisa had worked with these people for years. Kevin Park was one of the best soldiers she had ever known. Brave and smart with a talent for keeping his people safe. Alex Turner could fly anything with wings and had never lost a pilot under his command. Julie Adams could coordinate communications for a dozen different units without missing a beat. Captain, we're approaching the detention facility now, Kevin reported. Looks like a big concrete building with guard towers. Pretty standard stuff. Copy that, Kevin. Alex, can you take out those guard towers already on it? Captain, firing now. Lisa watched the tactical display as Alex's fighters destroyed the guard towers around the prison. The enemy soldiers scattered, running for cover as the human forces advanced. Everything was proceeding smoothly. Ground Team Alpha, this is Bravo Team, came another voice. We've secured the command center. Found some interesting intelligence here. Good work, Bravo. Kevin, you're clear to breach the detention facility. Roger that, Captain. Moving in now. For the next few minutes, Lisa listened to the steady flow of communication as Kevin's team entered the prison building. They moved carefully, checking each room and corridor for traps or hidden enemies. The enemy had abandoned most of their positions, leaving only a few guards who surrendered quickly. Captain, we've found them. Kevin's voice came through the speakers. We've got about 200 prisoners in the main holding area. They look scared, but healthy. Lisa felt relief wash over her. That's great news, Kevin. Begin evacuation procedures. Get our people out of there. Already on it, Captain. Medical teams are checking everyone over. We should have them loaded on transports within the hour. But then Kevin's voice came back, and there was something different about it. Something cold and hard that Lisa had never heard before. Captain, we need to check the basement levels. There are more rooms down here. Copy that, Kevin. Be careful. Lisa continued coordinating the evacuation while Kevin's team explored the lower levels of the prison. The rescued colonists were being loaded onto transport ships, and the medical teams were treating minor injuries. Everything was going according to plan. Then the communication channels went completely silent. Lisa stared at her console in confusion. Just seconds before, the airwaves had been filled with voices. Kevin reporting from the basement, Alex coordinating air support, the medical teams calling for supplies. Now there was nothing but static. "Kevin, report," she called into her headset. "Kevin, can you hear me?" No response. "Alex, are you receiving?" She tried again. Still nothing. Lisa checked her equipment, but everything was working perfectly. The communication systems were functioning normally. The problem wasn't with the technology. The humans had simply stopped talking. "Julie, are you getting anything from the ground teams?" Lisa asked her communications officer. Julie's face was pale as she worked her controls. "Nothing, Captain. All channels are open, but nobody's talking. It's like they all disappeared." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard about the incident at Kepler Station, where the human fleet had gone silent during the battle. But this was different. This was her people, her friends, and she had no idea what was happening to them. On the tactical display, she could see the human forces moving through the colony. The ground teams were still there, still advancing, but they moved differently now. They moved like hunters stalking prey, coordinated and deadly without needing to speak. The enemy defensive positions that had been holding out began falling one by one, not just defeated, but completely destroyed. Buildings that had stood for decades were reduced to rubble. Fortified bunkers that should have taken hours to assault were overrun in minutes. Lisa watched in growing horror as her people systematically eliminated every enemy presence on Titan 7. It wasn't just a military operation anymore. It was something else. Something that made her stomach turn with dread. "Captain," Julie said quietly, "the orbital sensors are picking up massive explosions all over the colony. It looks like they're destroying everything the enemy built." Lisa could see it on her screens. The human forces were moving through the colony like a wave of destruction, leaving nothing behind that could be used by the enemy. But they were careful to avoid the areas where the rescued colonists were being evacuated. Whatever was driving them to this violence, they were still protecting the innocent. The silence lasted for 27 minutes. Lisa timed it on her chronometer, unable to look away from the tactical display as her people transformed the colony into a graveyard. When the enemy had arrived 3 weeks ago, they had built fortifications, command posts, and weapons depots. Now there was nothing left but smoking ruins. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the silence ended. "Colony secured," came Kevin's voice over the communication system. His tone was calm and professional, exactly the same as it had been before. The silence began. "All hostiles eliminated. Medical teams to the detention facility immediately." Lisa stared at the communication panel, hardly believing what she had just heard. "Kevin, are you all right? What happened down there?" "We're fine, Captain. The mission is complete. All prisoners have been secured and are ready for evacuation." "Kevin, you went silent for almost half an hour. We couldn't reach you." There was a pause, then Kevin's voice came back. "Sorry about that, Captain. We had some technical difficulties with the communication equipment. Everything's working fine now." Lisa knew he was lying. The communication equipment had been working perfectly, but something had happened in that basement. Something that had triggered the same response she had heard about at Kepler Station. "What did you find down there, Kevin?" Another pause. "Evidence of war crimes, Captain. The enemy was conducting experiments on prisoners, medical experiments, on children." Lisa felt sick. "How many? 17 children, Captain? Ages 5 to 12. They were using them to test new weapons and medical procedures. We found the bodies." The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. She understood now why her people had gone silent. They had found something so horrible, so evil, that their normal human responses had shut down completely. They had stopped being soldiers and become something else. Something that could look at the torture and murder of children and respond with cold, systematic violence. "Captain, we need immediate medical and forensic teams down here," Kevin continued. "This needs to be documented properly." Dr. Xyluth adjusted the crystalline formations that made up her research equipment as she reviewed the data files for the third time that day. As one of the most respected xenopsychologists in the Galactic Council, she had been asked to investigate something that was making many council members very nervous. The human silence phenomenon was becoming too common to ignore and too dangerous to dismiss. Her research partner, Dr. Marcus Reed, sat across from her in the sterile white laboratory aboard Council Station Omega. Marcus was one of the few humans working in the Council's scientific division, and his insights had proven invaluable in understanding his own species. He looked tired, having spent the last week reviewing combat footage that would give most people nightmares. "The pattern is consistent across all incidents," Zayalith said, her voice creating musical tones that the translation device converted to standard council speech. Humans engage in normal combat communication until they encounter specific trigger events, then complete silence for a measurable period, followed by extreme combat effectiveness. Marcus nodded, rubbing his temples. "I've watched the footage from Kepler Station, Titan 7, and the Battle of New Geneva. Every time, it's the same thing. Something happens that crosses a line, and my people just stop talking." Zayalith had been studying alien psychology for over 60 years, but humans were proving to be unlike any species she had encountered before. Most races had predictable responses to stress and combat. They became more aggressive, more defensive, or more cooperative. But humans seemed to have a switch inside them that could flip them from one type of creature to another entirely. "The most disturbing aspect is the change in combat objectives," she continued, manipulating her crystal interface to display tactical analyses. "During normal operations, humans prioritize mission completion, prisoner capture, and minimal casualties. During silent periods, they prioritize complete elimination of threats. It's not something we plan," Marcus said quietly. "I've interviewed dozens of veterans who experienced the silence. None of them can explain exactly what happens. They remember everything, but it's like watching someone else control their body." The research lab's door chimed softly as Commander Ryan Brooks entered. He was one of the subjects they had been studying, having commanded the human fleet during the Kepler Station incident. Brooks had agreed to participate in their research, though he was clearly uncomfortable discussing the topic. "Commander Brooks, thank you for coming," Zayalith said. "We have some additional questions about the Kepler Station engagement." Brooks sat down heavily in the chair across from them. He was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. "I'll answer what I can. Dr. Dorr, I'm not sure how much help I'll be." "During the 18 minutes of silence, were you aware of your actions?" Zayalith asked. "Completely aware," Brooks replied without hesitation. "I knew exactly what I was doing, what my ships were doing, what needed to be done. But it felt different, like someone had turned off the part of my brain that worried about consequences." Marcus leaned forward. "Can you describe the decision-making process during that time?" Brooks was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "There was no process. I saw those enemy ships targeting the civilian shelters, and something inside me just decided that they all had to die. Not captured, not disabled, dead. And my crew felt the same way without me having to tell them." "How did you coordinate without communication?" Zayalith asked. "That's the strangest part," Brooks said. "We didn't need to talk. I knew where Sarah would be, what Denny would do, how Pete would react. It was like we were all parts of the same mind. I've never experienced anything like it before or since." Zayalith made notes on her crystal interface. The coordination without communication was perhaps the most puzzling aspect of the phenomenon. Most species became less coordinated under extreme stress, not more. After Brooks left, Marcus pulled up a series of brain scans on the laboratory's main display. "I managed to get neurological data from some volunteers who experienced the silence. The results are fascinating and terrifying." The scans showed human brain activity during normal combat situations versus during silent periods. Zayalith studied the colorful patterns with growing amazement. The communication center shut down completely, but the areas responsible for tactical thinking become hyperactive. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to specific regions on the scan. "The parts of the brain that process empathy and moral reasoning don't shut down like we would expect. They redirect their focus. Instead of considering the welfare of everyone involved, they focus exclusively on protecting perceived innocence. And the enemy is no longer considered worthy of moral consideration." Zayalith observed. "Exactly. During the silence, humans don't see their opponents as people anymore. They see them as threats to be eliminated. It's like a switch gets flipped that turns off mercy and turns on something much older and more primitive. Zeolith had studied the evolutionary history of dozens of species, but human development was uniquely violent. Most intelligent races had evolved from prey animals or social creatures that avoided conflict. Humans had evolved from hunters and predators, and that heritage was still buried deep in their psychology. The laboratory door chimed again, and Major Kevin Park entered. He had requested this meeting after learning about their research. Park looked older than his personnel file suggested, and Zeolith noticed the way his hands trembled slightly when he thought no one was looking. Major Park, we appreciate you volunteering for this study, Marcus said. I know discussing Titan 7 isn't easy. Park sat down and looked directly at Zeolith. Doctor, I need you to understand something. What we did down there, what we become during the silence, it's not who we want to be. But when I saw what they did to those children, something inside me broke. Can you describe the trigger moment? Zeolith asked gently. Park's hands clenched into fists. We found the bodies in the basement. 17 kids, ages 5 to 12. They had been cutting them open to see how human organs worked compared to other species. Some of the children were still alive when we found them. Zeolith felt her crystalline structure darken with sympathetic pain. Even through the translation device, she could hear the anguish in Park's voice. That's when the silence started. Marcus asked, For me, yes. I looked at those children, and something in my head just turned off. The part that thinks about consequences, about mercy, about being a good person. All that mattered was making sure the people who did this could never do it again. During the 27 minutes of silence, did you feel any hesitation about your actions? Zeolith asked. None. Park replied immediately. Every enemy soldier we killed, every building we destroyed, it all felt perfectly justified. It wasn't until we finished and the silence ended that I started to feel sick about what we had done. After Park left, Zeolith and Marcus spent hours reviewing all their data. The pattern was clear and deeply disturbing. Humans had a psychological mechanism that activated when they witnessed extreme cruelty toward innocents, especially children. During these episodes, they became something that was barely recognizable as the same species. The implications for Council security policy are enormous, Zeolith said, as she compiled her preliminary report. If humans can be triggered into this state by specific stimuli, we need protocols to manage the aftermath. Marcus nodded grimly. The worst part is that we can't control it. No human can predict when the silence will happen or how long it will last. We just have to hope it's directed at actual enemies and not allies. Have there been any incidents where humans went silent against Council forces? Zeolith asked. No, thank goodness. The trigger seems to be specifically related to harm against civilians, particularly children. As long as Council forces don't target innocent people, they should be safe. Zeolith began drafting her report to the Council's Security Committee. The research had revealed that humans possessed what could only be described as a berserker state, triggered by witnessing extreme cruelty. During these episodes, humans became extraordinarily dangerous, operating with perfect coordination despite no verbal communication. Most concerning was the complete shift in combat objectives during silent periods. Humans stopped trying to capture enemies or minimize casualties. They focused entirely on eliminating threats, often going far beyond what military necessity required. The recommendation has to be clear, Marcus said as he reviewed the draft report. When humans go silent during combat, all non-human forces should withdraw to safe distances. Attempting to communicate with or control human units during these episodes is pointless and potentially dangerous. What about enemy forces in the area? Zeolith asked. Marcus was quiet for a long time before answering. Based on our research, any enemy forces that triggered the silence should consider themselves already dead. Humans in this state will not stop, cannot be reasoned with, and will not accept any outcome short of complete elimination of the threats. Zeolith included this assessment in her final report, along with detailed neurological data and behavioral analysis. The document would be classified at the highest levels and distributed only to senior council leadership and military commanders. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their assigned seats, all eyes focused on the holographic display at the center of the chamber. The footage playing showed the aftermath of the Battle of New Geneva, where human forces had gone silent for 43 minutes while defending a council refugee camp. Admiral Grace Cooper stood at the speaker's podium, her uniform crisp and her expression calm, despite the weight of the moment. As the senior human representative to the council, she had been asked to address the growing concerns about human combat behavior. The silence phenomenon had occurred 17 times in the past year, and each incident had left the galaxy's leaders more unsettled than the last. Council Speaker Vorthok, a tall reptilian being with scales that shifted color with his emotions, called the emergency session to order. His scales were currently a deep purple, indicating serious concern. Admiral Cooper, the council has reviewed Dr. Zaelith's research report on human combat psychology. We have ... questions. Grace nodded respectfully. I'm here to answer them. Speaker Vorthok. The first to speak was Representative Killaran of the Andorian Collective. Her forearms gestured expressively as she addressed the assembly. Admiral, our analysis shows that during these silent periods, human forces demonstrate a disturbing capacity for violence. At New Geneva, your people didn't just defeat the enemy, they eliminated every trace of their presence. That's correct, Grace replied without hesitation. When the hegemony forces began targeting the refugee children directly, our response teams experienced what we call the silence. They stopped communicating and focused entirely on eliminating the threat. Representative Zilmuth of the Federation stood next. His blue skin was darker than usual, showing his distress. Admiral, we've been allies with humans for over 2 years now. We thought we knew your species, but these incidents suggest we may have been wrong about your fundamental nature. Grace looked around the assembly hall, seeing fear and uncertainty on faces from dozens of different worlds. These beings had welcomed humanity into their community, trusting that humans shared their values of peace and cooperation. Now they were learning that their human allies carried something dangerous inside them. Representatives, I understand your concerns, Grace said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustics. But I want to be clear about something important. The silence isn't a choice we make. It's not a tactical decision or a psychological weapon. It's an automatic response that activates when we witness extreme cruelty toward innocence. The holographic display changed to show brain scans from Dr. Zaelith's research. Grace gestured toward the colorful patterns. Our scientists have studied this phenomenon extensively. When humans encounter certain types of evil, particularly harm to children, our brains undergo a temporary change. The parts responsible for mercy and negotiation shut down, and older systems take control. Representative Thalver of the Crystalline Collective spoke next, her voice creating musical tones that the translation system converted to words. Admiral, this research suggests that humans can become unpredictable in combat situations. How can we trust allies who might transform into something uncontrollable? Grace had expected this question. It was the heart of the council's concern and the reason for this emergency session. Representative Tholvera, in every recorded incident of human silence, the trigger has been the same. Someone was deliberately harming innocent civilians, especially children. Our people don't go silent during normal combat operations or political disputes. It only happens when we witness true evil. Speaker Vorthok leaned forward in his chair. But Admiral, the transformation you described is extreme. During these silent periods, humans show no mercy toward enemies who attempt to surrender. Is this not a violation of council warfare protocols? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Grace knew her answer would determine humanity's future relationship with the Galactic Council. She could try to make excuses or apologize for human nature, but that wouldn't help anyone understand the truth. Speaker Vorthok, honored representatives, let me tell you what happened at New Geneva, Grace said, activating a new section of the holographic display. The refugee camp housed 15,000 civilians who had fled hegemony occupation. Families with small children, elderly people, wounded soldiers. They were defenseless. The display showed aerial footage of the refugee camp under attack. Grace pointed to specific areas as she continued. When our defense fleet arrived, the hegemony forces were systematically targeting the areas where children were sheltered. Not military targets, not strategic positions, playground areas and schools. They were killing children deliberately to terrorize the adult population. A murmur of disgust rippled through the assembly. Even species that had never seen human silence found the enemy's actions horrifying. That's when our people went silent. Grace continued. For 43 minutes, they stopped being soldiers following orders and became something else. They became parents who had found someone hurting their children. Representative Killoran spoke again, her voice softer now. Admiral, we understand the emotional impact of such situations, but the response seems disproportionate to the threat. Grace turned to face the Andorian representative directly. With respect, Representative Killoran, I disagree. The response was exactly proportionate to the threat. Anyone who would deliberately target children has declared themselves an enemy of all civilized life. They have chosen to place themselves outside the protection of mercy or law. The assembly hall fell silent as Grace's words sank in. She could see the representatives thinking, weighing the implications of what she had said. The council has a choice to make. Grace continued. You can try to control or suppress this aspect of human nature, which will likely fail and damage our alliance. So, you can accept that humans have this capability and create protocols to manage it. Speaker Vorthok's S-scales shifted to a lighter shade of purple. What kind of protocols do you suggest, Admiral? Grace activated the final section of her presentation. Dr. Zayalit's research team has already developed when human forces go silent during combat, all non-human council forces should withdraw to minimum safe distance. Civilian populations in the combat zone should be evacuated immediately. No attempt should be made to communicate with or control human units until normal communication resumes. And enemy forces, as Representative Zilmuth Grace's expression became deadly serious. Any enemy forces responsible for triggering human silence should be considered beyond quarter. The Council should make no diplomatic efforts to negotiate their surrender or survival. The Assembly erupted in shocked murmurs. The concept of declaring any force beyond quarter was almost unprecedented in Council history. Representative Thovera stood again. Admiral, you're asking us to essentially authorize the complete destruction of any force that harms civilians. This goes against centuries of Council law regarding proportional response. I'm not asking you to authorize anything, Grace replied calmly. I'm informing you of what will happen regardless of Council law. When humans go silent, we will eliminate the threat completely. You can work with that reality or pretend it doesn't exist, but you can't change it. The brutal honesty of her statement silenced the assembly. Grace could see the representatives struggling with the implications of having allies who operated by such absolute principles. Speaker Vorthok called for a recess so the representatives could discuss the proposal among themselves. Grace remained at the podium, watching as beings from across the galaxy debated humanity's place in their civilization. When the session resumed 3 hours later, Speaker Vorthok's S-scales had shifted to a pale blue, indicating reluctant acceptance. The Council has reached a decision. We will implement the Human Silence Protocol as outlined in Dr. Zayalit's research. The formal vote was closer than Grace had hoped, but decisive enough to establish the new policy. The Human Silence Protocol would become part of official Council military doctrine. The first time in galactic history that special accommodations had been made for a single species combat psychology. However, Speaker Vorthok continued, we must establish clear guidelines about what constitutes a triggering event. The Council cannot accept that humans might go silent over minor provocations. Grace nodded. The research is clear on this point. The trigger is specifically related to deliberate harm against defenseless civilians, particularly children. Humans don't go silent over military casualties, territorial disputes, or political conflicts. It only happens when we witness what we consider pure evil. Representative Killoran asked the final question. Admiral, can you guarantee that humans will never go silent against Council forces? Grace considered her answer carefully. As long as Council forces don't deliberately target innocent civilians for torture or murder, They have nothing to fear from human silence. Our people have never gone silent against allies, only against those who have chosen to become monsters. The Human Silence Protocol was officially ratified that day, establishing 3 key provisions. First, when human forces ceased tactical communication during combat, all non-human council units would withdraw to minimum safe distance.